The Mike McCarthy era is over in Dallas. Okay. After producing a pretty great 49-35 regular season record in Dallas, but unfortunately just a 1-3 mark in the postseason. The promotion of offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer will keep some level of continuity in the franchise, but just realize the times that are changing in the Big D, right? Then again, maybe some changes are warranted after the Cowboys locked like anyone's idea of a bad football team last season. Losing Dak Prescott for the second half of the year certainly didn't help matters, but yikes, right? What is Dak Prescott's fantasy season in the year 2025? Dak turns 32 in July. He's coming off a season-ending hamstring injury. This comes after missing 17 combined games during the 2020-2022 seasons due to thumb, calf, shoulder injuries, in addition to a, brutal dislocated ankle. Unfortunately, the injuries have taken a bit of a toll on Dak Prescott as a rusher over the years, right? But overall, Dak Prescott has averaged 19 rushing yards per game during the first 5 seasons of his career, but just 11.8 since that brutal ankle injury. Okay, this has accordingly led to a bit of more inconsistency in his counting numbers in the last recent seasons, right? So, of course, these later years have also coincided to a drop-off in available weaponry. Just really had CeeDee Lamb. While the team didn't make any upgrades to speak of during free agency, the trade for George Pickens adds an upgrade at wide receiver too, right? Drafting Tyler Booker with the 12th overall pick should help ease the offensive line transition in the post-Zach Martin era. I don't know if it's necessarily going to fix it, but I think it'll ease the transition. It was probably about time for some turnover anyway, right? I mean, Dallas is just not being successful in the postseason. But considering the Cowboys finished in 2024 as the PFF ranked 25th ranked offensive line, something has to change. Because, again, that was with Zach Martin. So what is Dak Prescott's fantasy football value for 2025? Look, Dak isn't getting any younger. He'll be anywhere from the league's 5th to the 7th oldest starting quarterback by the time week 1 rolls around. The addition of Pickens certainly helps, but arguably only because the previous bar was so low. Luckily, Prescott isn't being treated as his high-end former self in the fantasy market. He is the early ADP quarterback 16. So that means he's the 16th quarterback drafted. Okay, he's firmly in play as a potential late-round gem at the position in the same tier, guys, as Trevor Lawrence, Drake May, C.J. Stroud, and Tua Tagovailoa. I think Dak Prescott has a better season than Trevor Lawrence and Tua. Okay? This sort of depth is a major reason why I'm a fan of, deploying the first elite dual-threat options at the top of the draft, right? Are we seriously going to try to make Javonte Williams a thing? Are we? I mean, apparently, right? One of just 10 teams with under $10 million devoted to their backfield in 2025 dollars. The Cowboys were expected to be major players in the draft's running back market, right? Last year, they missed out on Derrick Henry. Saquon came out and said that Dallas never contacted me. So if you've been down this bad in the running back room and you had 2 greats, not saying Saquon or Derrick Henry would have signed with them, but Derrick Henry had a house in Dallas. I don't see Saquon going to Dallas, but that may be a little biased at this point. But Dallas has made no moves to improve this, okay? Maybe 5th rounder Jadon Blue, wind up being the exception to that rule, and that draft capital is king. But the lack of resources devoted to the group last April reflects the reality that it might be time to take Williams a little bit more seriously as the potential lead back here. To his credit, Williams was electric before his 2022 brutal knee injury. Sadly, it's been a while since we've seen that version of the former second-round pick. Times were particularly tough in 2024 despite running behind the PFF second-ranked offensive line. If he can't do that in Denver, guys, what do we make sure that he's going to do it in Dallas? But still, only 25 years old. Maybe Williams will simply just be a better, healthier version of his former self in a new environment. We know what a change of scenery does for some players, right? Okay. I think we've just seen bounce-back years. Saquon, Derrick Henry when he went from Tennessee to Baltimore. Josh Jacobs went from the Raiders to the Green Bay Packers. Now, do I think that he's on these three guys' level? No. But those are examples of the bounce-back seasons that we've recently seen. A change of scenery does a lot for a player. Okay? Well, then there's Miles Sanders, who's only 28. But he also ranks among, out of 59 players, he ranks 55th in yards per carry over the last two seasons. Williams ranks last in that sample. Okay. The ex-Eagle veteran does have the Panthers' sad excuse, probably, for an offensive environment to blame, although the difference in dollars compared to Javonte indicates the potential expectations at hand. Okay, this brings us to Mr. Blue, who might have a good chance at earning a real day one role as any three-down back. Okay? So what is the value behind the Cowboy running backs in 2025? I'm mostly selling the idea of either Williams or Sanders reinventing themselves in Dallas this season, due to the reality that it's hardly a given that the scoring offense or offensive line takes a major leap back into the league's top 10 units. Again, that offensive line being 26 last year, guys, has to improve. It has to help out this running game. Having George Pickens, having a CeeDee Lamb will help out the running game because now it's just not CeeDee Lamb, right? What is the ceiling for George Pickens in this offense? And with all due respect to CeeDee Lamb, there shouldn't be too much concern about his 2025 production. After all, we're talking about the wide receiver one in PPR points per game at 21 over the past two seasons. That's with Cooper Rush starting 8 games, guys, in 2024. So the 26-year-old talent is certifiably good at the game and only deserves to go behind Chase and Justin Jefferson at the position in 2025 drafts. Okay, now then there's Pickens, who just turned 24 in March, guys. He's real young, following a relatively underwhelming 2024 campaign that featured him only having 59 receptions into 900 yards and just only 3 touchdowns. While his status as Pittsburgh clear-cut wide receiver one often resulted in all sorts of defensive attention, the 3-year veteran usually made on-the-field headlines for the wrong but widely entertaining reasons, right? Still, this shouldn't distract from the fact that Pickens has proven capable of doing some seriously awesome things on the football field. Okay? Not to mention he's 6'3", 200 pounds. He plays even bigger than that. Okay? Speaking of splash plays, the Georgia product has averaged 16 yards per reception and almost 10 yards per target since entering the league. Now, this is with Russell Wilson's beautiful moon ball. I think Dak Prescott's got a decent deep ball. So we'll see how that translates. Okay? The fit is also rather great inside this Cowboys offense, in my opinion, considering Lamb is usually deployed from the friendly confines of the slot. Pickens should make himself right at home as the offensive X wide receiver instead of, Jonathan freaking Mingo. Right? I think that's quite an upgrade, guys. Now, Mike Tomlin's track record of keeping knucklehead wide receivers in line before watching them fail for all the wrong reasons elsewhere is certainly troubling. But to Pickens' credit, he's never been in any serious real-life trouble and has played in 48 out of potential 51 games in his career. Only missed 3 games. All in all, the Cowboys profile as a fantastic real-life partner for Pickens as long as all parties involved are able to simply focus on playing ball. I think that it works out quite well in fantasy land. Sure, Russell Wilson's moonballs made for some nice connections last season, but Pickens has otherwise been forced to largely deal with one mediocre quarterback after another in Pittsburgh. Nobody's exactly mistaking Dak for the best quarterback in the world. Let's get that straight. Just realize that he did play at a legitimate MVP level in 2023, a.k.a. the last time he was healthy for a full season. Okay. So, what is CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens' fantasy rankings for 2025? Lamb is my 5th overall ranked player in fantasy, and I'm only drafting the top 2 running backs and wide receivers ahead of him in non-super flex formats. Okay. Meanwhile, it's tough to move Pickens too far up in the ranks due to the presence of a more clear-cut number 1 option. But I've upgraded the now ex-Steeler from wide receiver 38 to wide receiver 31 in my rankings, ahead of guys like Odunze and Jerry Jeudy. Okay, he should be a solid wide receiver 2 on fantasy teams. Is Jake Ferguson the late round tight end of 2025? The artist known as ASAP Third, that's his nickname. I had to look that up. I didn't know that. Is coming off a relatively disappointing 2024 campaign where he only had 59 catches under 500 yards and did not score the entirety of the season. Now, this is following an impressive 2023 where he had almost 800 yards and 5 scores. Okay, that was after Dalton Schultz left and took his talents to Houston. That was his first full season. So the initial campaign demonstrated some serious upside, right? Ferguson's monstrous 3-touchdown explosion against the Packers in the 2023 playoffs is good for the second highest single game fantasy boom, which was 37 points above expectation during the last 2 seasons. Okay? They call him the Seahawks Slayer. Apparently he's had great games against the Seahawks in the past. Earned an impressive 102 targets in his last full healthy season with Dak Prescott. The second most on the Cowboys behind Lamb. That latter health point is my best explanation for why the 26-year-old talent struggled to get much going in the box last season. Ferguson suffered a grade 2 MCL sprain in week 1 and was later concussed after coming back in week 11. This means we only had a 6-game sample size of Ferguson actually getting to play with Dak. A stretch in which he ranked 5th most targets among all tight ends. Dak Prescott loves him some Jake Ferguson. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Ferguson is poised to put up a top 3 season in tight end world, but we are just 12 months removed from him sporting a preseason top 10 tight end in ADP. Prescott has tossed 30-plus touchdowns in each of his last 3 seasons in which he started 16-plus games. So if he's healthy, he's producing. Ferguson's name might as well be the next to touchdown regression in the dictionary after racking up a league-high 86 targets without a score last season. Do I see him getting to that potential in 2023 again? I'm not so sure. So what is the fantasy outlook for Jake Ferguson in 2025? This is exactly the sort of bet late round tight end diehards should be locking to make. Ferguson is my tight end 11. And someone I will happily continue to buy at his present. Tight end 15 ADP. I can guarantee you I can't even name 14 tight ends that will produce more than Jake Ferguson next year. That's a fact of life, guys. Next, we're going to cover the defense of the Cowboys. Did the Cowboys make an effort, an honest effort, to improve their offensive line? Talk about the offensive line first, okay? We're not going to talk about their defense because I think their defense is not good. So last year's starters were as follows, okay? Tyler Guyton, which was 75th best grade among 85 tackles. Tyler Smith at left guard was the 22nd above 122 guards and centers. Not bad. Connor Beebe, their center, was 49th out of that 122, and Zach Martin was actually a 46. Terrence Steele was 45th out of 85. Okay? So now, Guyton and Martin both missed times with injury and should be given some slack for their respective performances. Still, the reality that the future Hall of Famer is being replaced by a first-round rookie doesn't exactly guarantee an immediate upgrade. The Cowboys are basically hoping that improved health and continuity that it will turn this rather bad group into something better. Overall, Dallas was just 31st in yards per contact per carry last season. This is why I wanted to talk about the offensive line versus the defense. The offensive line needs work, guys. Big time. This run game needs to be a force to be reckoned with this year if they are wanting to succeed at